Hello and welcome to the System Weaver event. All the people here in the hall and everyone remotely, we have amazing attendance. So it's a real honor and pleasure being here today. My name is Gilad Bandel and I serve as VP Cybersecurity at System Weaver. Our today topic has to do with the challenge that we have in the automotive industry between the ISO-SAE 21434 V model against the agile iterative model and way of work. So we're going to discuss what each side brings and what are the challenges and how it can work together, because it's not that simple. Looking at the agenda, I will start by a brief overlook of software development methodologies and the evolution along the years, present the V model against the agile and what are the problems that we have. There are some solutions to this. We call it incremental Tara, and I'll speak about this thing. Please note that this is not something which is final. There isn't standardization about it yet. So if you leave this meeting with more questions than answers, this is good. This is the target to raise the challenges here. We'll speak about the implication on the continual cybersecurity, and please note the difference between continuous and continual. Those are not the same words. Continuous means something which is going all the way in a linear fashion, in a continuous fashion, while continual is something which is built in steps. So you go a step and another step and another step in the continual process. And I'll give a few words about the future and things that we need to do as an industry. So let's look at software development methodologies along the years. When we started developing punch cards, and many years ago, it was considered to be an art. So there wasn't anything concrete, any process. And if you were a software engineer or software programmer at those days, then you must have been a genius. Nobody could tell you how to do things. As system grew, this became a problem because it did not scale. So we started with software engineering. Methodologies in software development, such as structured programming, strong typing, object-oriented software development, and so on. And we started to do some planning and started to look how things should look at the end. Hence, the breakthrough in the waterfall model. In the waterfall model, we spoke about something like plan your work and your work plan, amazing ideas. I know that today we all laugh about them, but that was the best that we had back those days. And the idea is that you specify the whole content of the product. Everyone goes to work, software development goes to work, testing goes to work, planning the testing, and at the end of the project, everyone meets, you run the testing, check the functionalities according to the specifications, and provide it to the customer. The problem with this thing is that things change, especially long projects, requirements change, reality changes. So you cannot be blind to this and you need to adapt. Therefore, this thing was scrapped and we moved to Spiral. Spiral is very nice because you do like prototyping. You start with a small model of the system and then you develop another cycle and another cycle and another cycle. And the nice thing is that you are in touch with the customer and you adjust the needs and the requirements and the functionality and the technology along the way. So by the end of the project, you have something which is much more suited to the customer needs. The problem with this thing is that it tends to be a never-ending story because you can do another circle and another circle and another cycle, and you're not really sure when the project ends, and the customer can come with new things. And yes, it's another set, so let's do it again. So we move to something which is called Agile. I can assure you and guarantee 100% that if we meet again here in 10 years and we'll speak about Agile, we're going to laugh about that old outdated, stupid technology. But this is nature of progress. So right now, Agile is the state of the art in the extreme programming in the software development industry, and it moves to other industries as well. So it's not only in software; it's embraced by other fields as well. So in this concept, you developed sprints. You have a backlog. You have user stories. You develop a sprint. At the end of the sprint, you are done, and that sprint goes into production. So hence continuous integration, continuous deployment. You also do continuous testing. And as we're going to see in our industry, in many other industry, you need to perform also continual compliance. If we go into our industry, we need to follow the TARA. The TARA is a V model. The V model is a baseline, a concept of the waterfall. So it's a bit better than waterfall, but basically it was built with the waterfall. And how was it built and what is the rationale? We have the 21434 functional safety, which is a V model, which worked back then and still works to a certain extent, kind of for hardware, for mechanical parts. So you can do functional safety according to the V model, and today it is still okay. So you can do it right and it works right. When came cybersecurity, then the easiest thing to do is we have 26262, and we have a new standard. Let's do the same. Let's mimic. Let's copy. If it's good for this, is basically surely it will work for cybersecurity. And this is the seed of evil. And this is the mistake, because people that did it, I don't have any criticism. They did amazing work, but seeing into the future wasn't then done properly, and it just mimics step by step the 26262 for very good reasons. But the problem is that in due time we have a problem, and the problem enters Agile. Agile, this is the Agile manifesto. While those things are very important, the value is actually here: interaction of people, customer collaboration. In the waterfall, there wasn't customer collaboration. You got the spec, and 2 years later, this is the next time you see the customer. In Agile, you see the customer involved every day and in every sprint. So this is important, but this is more important. And this is the concept of Agile. Now, everyone moves to Agile, whoever is in software development and now in hardware development and mechanical development. Things are developed in Agile because it's much faster, much more efficient, shorter time to market, better fit to the needs of the customer. So someone moved the cheese. In case you did not read this book, Who Moved My Cheese? If you didn't read it, it's by Spencer. I forgot the name. Someone can help me with the name. Thank you.
We get some thumbs up on the book here.
I've got some. Yeah, it's
Not
a good
so much from the room.
By the way, I make parentheses. It's a really, really good book with a lot of depth, and there are a few video clips on YouTube which play the book, and there is a children's version which teach children how to make adaptation to changes and how not to be rigid. And the fact that always the cheese was one way, and I always got the cheese that way, and suddenly disappeared, doesn't mean that if I'm going to go to the same place again and again, suddenly it will appear. So Who Moved My Cheese is what happened to our industry. So now we move to the Agile way of work. It's a different culture, different thinking, different way. You run in cycles, you run in.
Spencer Johnson.
Spencer Johnson.
I knew someone would come with the right answer. So this is the concept of Agile. In Agile, you run daily scrums, you have planning interval, and in the end, you end up in a solution. And you do one sprint and another sprint, and you do daily scrums. There should be stand-up meetings. The good things about stand-up meetings is they are standing up. That means your legs hurt. If you do stand-up meetings by Zoom, you are wrong. Stand up, even if it's by Zoom. This way you speak what you need to speak and you don't waste time. So there need to be very short. So this is the concept. If we compare it to the legacy waterfall, so the legacy waterfall, you have all the way one process, linear process. You don't look back, you don't look aside, you don't understand that thing changes. If you do it in Agile, you do it step by step, sprint by sprint, and this is a moving target. And when you have a moving target, you cannot still shoot in the direction where the target was 2 years ago or 2 months ago because it moved. So you need to follow the target and you need to adapt and change and run in small quantas, small chunks of work. The next slides I'm going to skip. I do urge you to return to this presentation and read them because they compare in detail many characteristics of the V model against Agile. And this gives a better understanding, but I'm not going to read them because then you will fall asleep and you'll write at the end that the presentation was boring. So this is about development. This is the same about testing. A lot of things like testing in Agile and testing in the V model or in waterfall are very different because in a waterfall model, you test at the end. You develop, there are unit tests and so on, and you develop at the end, you test at the end. In Agile, you test every single sprint. Very different concept, but I'm not going to go into it. How does this new Agile influence our market? We have shorter development cycle because you are focusing on the target and focusing on the needs, and you don't need to redo things. So the costs go down, the customer satisfactions go up. This is a cell phone, so every day you get updates to your cell phone, whether you know or you don't know. This is the Agile things. The market influence, we go to be a more software-centric industry, software-defined vehicle, connectivity, over-the-air updates, software updates, collective driving, intelligent transportation system, smart cities, everything speaks everything. There are all kinds of interesting questions here, like in testing of a ordinary vehicle, you know the specification, you know how it works, you test. But what do you do in testing software-defined vehicle when you cannot anticipate the behavior of the vehicle? You have AI inside. You cannot always prove how you read the decision. There are moral questions with software vehicles and autonomous driving. Like the known question, the car is driving and there is a 58-year-old person and 85-year-old lady and a 9-year-old child. Now, you cannot prevent the accident. What do? You need to run one of them. The vehicle needs to reach this decision. This is a moral decision. Read Asimov, rules number 1, 2, and 3, laws, the robot laws, which now come in practice about who do you hurt. You know what's the answer, by the way? What is the answer regarding the consideration how to manage an accident which you cannot prevent? The answer is protect the vehicle passengers. So the concept is take the choice which will bring best protection to the vehicle passenger. So this is a moral decision, but at least the system does not need to think about the external factors. So there are a lot of things here that we can discuss, not today. The development, we all went to development. A lot of influence on the development, on the DevOps. We need to be in a continual phase, continuous deployment. You update software once when the vehicle left the factory, that's all. You don't see it again. You cannot update the software again. But now you need to update again and again. What do you do if 2 years after the vehicle is on the road, a new vulnerability was detected, and now your vehicle is vulnerable? You cannot leave it as it is. You need to take action. You need to analyze it, the impact, and reach a decision. So this is the TARA in the V model. A few things to mention. It does not tell you what to do. It tells you how it should be done. So it's not prescriptive. You can implement it in different fashions, and different organizations implement it in different fashions. But nevertheless, it does not meet the agile problem. So there isn't a solution now for this thing. Let's speak about iteration, because this is the heart of the things. In Agile, you don't do iterations. You do your model, you analyze your model, and you are done with your model. And that's a TARA. You want to implement control, do it well, you are done. When do you do iteration in TARA? In extreme cases. What could be in extreme cases? 2 years, as I said, you might file log4j, which is the new vulnerability, which wasn't known there, which many IVIs can be attacked through it. You need to understand the impact of this new vulnerability on the vehicle and decide whether it's a high risk or a low risk. If it is a high risk, then you need to take action, such as software update. So an iteration in the TARA is something that, to happen, something very extreme needs to happen. However, in Agile, this is the way of work. We don't know any other way except for iterations. Now, there is a conflict, because from one side, you need to have a safe vehicle, and this means you need to do a good TARA. From the other side, you are developing in an Agile fashion, because you want shorter development cycle, a better product fit, and so on. And it doesn't work together. It doesn't work. You cannot run a TARA on an Agile environment. It wasn't conceived. So we need to find a way in which we create something, a new creature, which is called an iterative TARA, a way to think how to do the iterations. Now, I want to take a few minutes and speak about two other things to see some reference and to understand that we're not alone in this universe. And I want to take two items from NIST, the National Institute and Science of Technology, of Standards and Technology, from the US. So the first one is the cybersecurity frame. Interesting to say that this is a new version. Version 2 just came out. You are encouraged to look for an article that I wrote, and I'll be more than happy to share with you, which analyzes this new standard, and especially this govern thing, which did not exist before. So the new standard speaks about governing and governance. So we need to understand that NIST reflects on Agile and thinks about how Agile should fit this thing. So there is a second reference model, the risk management model. It's called RMF, which again says how should a system look like when you develop it. And there is a match between the Agile and those things. So you could argue that if you do a daily Agile stand-up meeting, this means identify in the NIST vocabulary. And if you do a backlog refinement, this perform the categorize. So there is a match between those things. So those new standards and references do think better Agile than the old versions. So there is a match between those two. It's not perfect. It's not plug and play. It's more like plug and pray, but it's there. And that means that other bodies realized and understood that there is a problem and there is a solution for it, and those are the way to look at it. So you could align the NIST with the Agile. So those are the NIST items: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, and they can fit in an Agile environment. You need to know how to do it and what to do there. But there is a way. Not simple, but there is a way. Looking at operations, again, you can map things. So you can look at the NIST thing and map them to Agile. This is the thing that we need to do with Tara. We need to look at what others did. We need to look at Tara. We need to look at our environment and see how to fit in the Agile. So this is another example. I'm not going to go into it. How to do a product development mapping into Agile. Bottom line is that we need to agilize the Tara. We need to have a Tara which works in an Agile environment. And we need to address these things. So Tara is a long process. It takes months to run. Even if you use the best tools from System Weaver, it takes months to run. Hidden promotion. Okay? This against to Agile, which is 2 or 3 weeks. So you need to find a way. You need to analyze the component and subcomponent. That means that if you are using a Tara tool, it needs to have multiple level of abstraction, because you need to do it at the vehicle level, and you need to do it at the sprint level, and at the module level. So this is something which is not out of the box. It's not clear. It's not in the standard. So you need to find a way how to cope with this thing. Let's say you did multiple Taras. Let's say this is one of the ways. Did multiple Taras. You need to aggregate them into a full Tara. If you're a tier 1, you need to provide this as evidence and artifacts and reports to your OEM. If you're an OEM, you need to take those Taras and provide them to your auditor. How do you do it? If you do one Tara to do traceability and tracking and coverage, it's easy. You know what you did. But if you do it on the Tara and on sprint basis, how do you make sure that you covered everything? What should be the process to ensure this thing? So the new Tara, incremental Tara, needs to find a solution for this. And you need to bend, adapt, choose your word, the Tara into the Agile environment. So in the past, the thing that led was the Tara. Now the thing that leads is the Agile. So now you need to have an Agile which follows the Tara. In terms of way of thinking and solution, we can consider 3 options. I'm not saying those are the only options. I'm just suggesting things. Nothing was standardized. So there might be more ideas. One idea is to have one continuous build Tara. That means that you start with Tara from day 0 and you have one Tara. And every sprint you update the Tara and add to it more things and add more things until you build at the end of the day one Tara. The good thing is that you have one Tara which you can present and say, this is for the whole vehicle. Somehow you need to prove that by adding more to the Tara, you actually cover everything. Not trivial. A second option is you run multiple Taras. You have 40 sprints. On each sprint, you run a Tara, which is very good and simple because it goes hand by hand with the Agile. So you run not one Tara, you run 30, 40, 50 Taras. What's the problem here? Prove that the integral is correct. That means that the area under the curve is the sum of all those rectangles. So you need to prove that each atomic Tara is equal to one full Tara. Interesting how to do it. One thing that you could argue here is that you might have influences and mutual influences between modules.
between sprints. So you did something in a sprint which affects the bus. And the bus is also related in another 3 modules. So now it's not enough that you test and do a TARA for this specific module, but also about the influence modules. So you need a dependency map to be created and maintained all along the way, in which all the modules are being connected. And when you do something, you need also to look at the affected modules and broaden the scope and think about all the affected, related, influence, dependence. Choose your word. And then you might be on a safer side, but maybe you do things that are not needed, because if option B is correct, then you don't need to go to option C, because option B is much cheaper. But then you need to prove that this is correct, and someone needs to standardize and prove that it's going to work. So the idea is that it doesn't matter how and what you do, you need to agilize and do an incremental value TARA, in which in each step you look at the asset, at the content, you look at the asset, you do the risk management of the relevant assets, set the goals, set the controls, might have claims, and then you are done. And this is again and again and again for the string. So from story to story, you might need to update other stories because you added controls which we did not consider before. And we need to prove that it's going to work. We need to prove that if we do it, like in software development, it's already proven. It's already proven that the sum of all the sprints is equal to one product, and it works, and we know that it works. Regarding testing, it was proven that if you do testing on a module by module base, and each module is tested independently, it is equivalent to testing the whole product end to end. We need to think that to prove that if you do the same concept on TARAs, it will hold. That means that if you do TARAs per sprint, as you do testing per sprint, as you do development per sprint, as you do stories per sprint, the TARA will hold, and you will have a safe and secure vehicle, module, software at the end by doing those incremental TARAs. It looks the right direction. Nobody says yet how to do it. Industry is struggling about it. It would be interesting to hear during the Q&A session how you guys are handling and relating those things, and how do you, what do you think about it? So this is not a lecture, okay? This is not something that I know that I teach you. This is something that I raise more. You should end up here with more question marks than you entered. And if you have more question marks and more doubts, then I did my job right. Let's speak about controls and how we implement controls. If we are in TARA, then we take the module. Let's speak a bit about the risk and the controls. So as a side note, if you do a TARA on the abstract model of a vehicle, you take best practices, well-known guidelines, catalogs, and you apply them, and you come with damage scenarios, you come with threat scenarios, with attack paths, you set the risks, you decide how to handle the threat, you can avoid it, you can share it, you can accept it. And if you are not willing to accept the risk, then you need to set a goal how this thing should happen, and you need to set controls. But if you do it only based on the basics of looking at the model, you are halfway done. You are not done, because you need to set controls and protect against other sources of risk. For example, vulnerability management. If you look at vulnerability management, you need to take the image, because this is the only thing you can trust. You cannot trust the code. You cannot trust if you're an OEM. Sorry, tier ones, you cannot trust the tier ones. If you are tier ones, sorry, tier twos, you cannot trust tier twos. So you cannot trust your supply chain. You need the last person on the supply chain to do the full test, full review. So for example, S-bombs. People can give you S-bomb, but tier ones have suppliers and subcontractors, and they might bring in pieces of code that you don't know about them. So you need to look at vulnerabilities, take the image, reverse engineering, extract for it the S-bomb, do reverse static image analysis, find CVs, find CWEs, do reverse code decompiling, static code analysis, and then you have a second source of risks that you need to control, and you need to set control based on vulnerability management. A third source might be penetration testing. If you reach penetration testing, then you did the lousy job all the way, but still it's a control game. And during penetration testing, you might find a vulnerability. It's very sad that you found it so late, but better late than never. So you need to apply it as source of risks because it was discovered. And worst case, that you find it in the field. So if you have an intrusion detection, intrusion prevention system in the vehicle, or you take out the telematic information, analyze in the cloud, and you identify that there was an attack, then you have a new risk that you need to address. And you need to set control. So the earlier you set a control, the earlier you fix a bug, the cheaper it is. The price of fixing a bug goes up exponentially along the time. So when you work in an agile development and you do the TARA, in each cybersecurity you need, in each sprint, you need to set the new controls. And one of the things that we need to prove is that if you set the controls on each one of the sprints, the overall controls give you a safe vehicle. Still to be proven. We know that if we develop a project end-to-end and analyze it and set controls, it works. We need to prove that it also works if you do it in an incremental fashion. The same goes with testing. You might do testing for each sprint. At the end of the sprint, you are happy. You did your functional testing, your penetration testing, and each sprint was tested, both functionality and cybersecurity. Now, we need to prove that done, means that you don't have a domino effect. You don't have the butterfly effect that you made a change here and it affects somewhere there. If you develop Agile in the right way, this is true, but still needs to be tested. So this is the testing cycle. Not going to go into every single step, but still important to understand. This brings us to the terminology that I mentioned at the beginning, continual cybersecurity activity. You cannot do it once, you cannot do it once at the beginning, you cannot do it once at the end. There is no beginning and there's no end, mate. There's always a beginning. So you need to do it all along the software development. You need to do it for certification. UNR 155 kicks in mid of next year. And you need to do it aftermarket. You need to do it if you're at OEM. You need to do it all the way. You need to have your VSOC, and you need to collect events and do threat intelligence and reach a decision that you need to take some action if you find something as you develop. If you're tier one, you still need to listen from your OEMs. If you are good, you set up your cybersecurity product cybersecurity team, and you need to react to cybersecurity events. Some of them based on your threat intelligence, listening to NVD, the Japanese vulnerability database, listening to other sources, and reach decision what should be done. You need to do continual cybersecurity, You need to prove and track always full traceability, so you know where things come from, and you need to prove that you have a full coverage. Otherwise, you're not covered. So this is cybersecurity operation. Again, you can look at it later. And this is our overall picture. I think that we spoke quite enough about the processes, so no need to go deeper. Speaking about the future, and what is the thing that you should take from this lecture? First of all, many question marks. You should be aware. So if we created here awareness, then I did my job well. Should be aware of this conflict. You should be aware that we have a problem and that we need to address it now with whatever tools we have. We need to wait for future tools and future standardization. So I think that everyone agrees that moving from waterfall to agile is a fact, because we want faster, shorter time to market. We want cheaper products, cost reduction, flexibility. It has to be effective, efficient. We must do it. This cannot be at the cost of stability. This is functional, and cannot be at the cost of cybersecurity. So the fact that you have something which is, let's call it quick and dirty, doesn't mean that it can be unsafe. Definitely not in the industry, in the automotive industry, where we speak about lives. If this thing happens in the IT, you lose information, you lose money, you lose reputation, you lose. Okay, nobody dies. If you go to any critical and life and physical cyber systems, like hospitals and medical, the aviation, maritime, railways, rails, trains, vehicles, critical infrastructure, we're speaking about lives. So it's not about availability and confidentiality, and it's about life, about availability. If your vehicle does not drive, just think about the meaning of a cyber attack, of stopping all the buses, or stopping all the ambulances, stopping all the firefighters, stopping all the police cars. So the cybersecurity here is much more severe than the IT. The current V model, which is a derivative of the functional safety HERA, was good, needs to be updated. It's not up to date. Currently, there are no tool chains and there is no standardization which tells you how and what to do. So we need for now to do with the awareness that we have as much as possible with those things. There isn't a consensus. Ali and I had a few, Ali is the product owner of the cybersecurity in Automotive, and we had a few meetings. Now, every 2 people have 3 opinions. We have 6 different, contradicting opinions. So what are the best thing to do? In the slide that I showed, the alternative was the integral. This is a summary of a long discussion in which, after blood was spilled, we decided not to agree, and it was over Teams. So you can imagine so we lack a consensus how to do it and what needs to be done. The ISO-SAE standard needs to form a subcommittee which will convene on this subject and will come with the update to the standard which will address this thing. And we need the guidance of the standard. So anyone who is interested in joining this subcommittee, you are more than welcome to see me. I will assist you in connecting to the right people and contribute your knowledge, your experience, your ideas on how to address those things. So if you are tier 1, an OEM, software development, you have any experience with this thing, please see us. and I will direct you to the right people, or you can join the committee and influence the next standard. Before question, one thing that I do want to point out are the references. So those references appear in the standardization, especially this article, which you need to purchase if you want to see it, by Bill Mazzara and Guo, that speak about this subject. This thing was triggered by a few of our customers and friends in the industry, tier ones and OEMs, which struggle with this thing and do not have any solutions. So for now, I think that I covered this thing. I hope that you have many questions in mind. I hope this is something a bit new for you, some of you. That'll be challenging for others that are now thinking about what they need to do at home. So thank you very much. And we're open to questions from the audience, from here, from Marcus. Do we have anything?
Not just yet. People are, building up the courage.
Yes, please.
I have a couple of questions.
Maybe you present yourself.
Oh, okay. Jan Söderberg, and I'm actually working at the System Weaver. So one reflection on what you said about.
It's not, just to it's not a planted question. It's not.
So you mentioned traditional safety critical systems like trains and factories and so process control. And if you look at them, they are, I guess, they have not been developed in agile methods, I would assume, firstly. And also, normally they are not connected. So that means that to some degree they are spared from cybersecurity requirements. But then I realized that was a story some 20 years ago about the gas centrifuge controller.
It has nothing to do with Israel whatsoever. I deny. So,
but you know that one.
yeah. Among other things, I have a hobby. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Israeli military special forces, still at my advanced age. Nothing to do with that story. So a few things. Respectfully, I a bit disagree. And I can support this by previous jobs I held, especially in the industrial control system, ICS, SCADA systems, in which a few things to say. Physical cyber system and IT, OT, IT is in information technology, OT is operation technologies, convergence exists. Just to give you a few examples, there's something which is called AMR, automatic meter reading. Once upon a time, people would come to your home and read your gas meter and water meter and electricity meter. Now we have smart systems. A smart system reads your meter from remote. So we have remote telematics, as we have in the vehicles, which goes to the electricity company. This is the basis for your bill, which goes to you by email and goes to your bank or to your credit card. So we have a direct connection between the IT and the OT. So this happens. If you want to know when your next bus is going to arrive, the control over the buses is an OT system. But the information is on the internet. So this is an IT system. So those things happen. So the integration between IT and OT happens. And there need to be solutions for this thing, such as diodes and all kinds of things which, so air gap do not exist anymore. So we can take this off the table. The industry is moving ahead and fast forward. The second thing that you mentioned is development technologies. I do agree that those guys develop amazing things with a lifespan of 20 and 25 years. So if you take a PLC, which is a programmable logic controller, very similar to our ECUs, with the main difference that the ECU has the logical init coded by software, and the PLC is programmable. So you program its logic. Nevertheless, they last for 20, 30 years, and you can find substations and railway equipment, which was back in the 80s and 90s of the previous century. Then they were not developed with any cybersecurity in mind. Therefore, they are very susceptible to cybersecurity attacks. As such, the industry moved ahead and changed this thing. And in the last few years, cybersecurity kicked in aviation, in maritime, in railways, in industrial control system, and they do develop with advanced development technologies and with concept of secure by design and secure in depth. So they do move ahead. I don't want to make for myself additional promo here, but if you watch and search on YouTube, I think there was an ASRG webinar that I gave a few years ago, which was comparing the IT industry, the IC-SCADA industry, and the automotive industry from the cybersecurity perspective, and looking at history and reflecting on how things and what was the dynamic. When was the first attack here, here, and here? And the attack that you mentioned that we have nothing to do with it, triggered long before the automotive industry, the awareness for cybersecurity in the industrial control system. So I do claim that the IT is ages, light years ahead, depending if you measure time or distance. The industrial control system is about 4 or 5 years ahead of the automotive industry, and we in the automotive industry are lagging behind. There is one difference, I can say fortunately or unfortunately, nobody yet died because of a cybersecurity attack on the vehicle, as opposed to IC-SCADA, in which many years ago, allegedly, Russia attacked even twice the grid of the Ukraine and shut down, and people died. Very, very lucky for the Ukraine that this happened many years ago before the current war, so they were able to update the system and prepare. And current attacks, do you hear of any cybersecurity successful attacks from Russia on the Ukraine? Anyone? No. Do you think Russians attack the Ukraine using cybersecurity? Yes. Why aren't they successful? Because the Ukraine took good measures after those two attacks and improved very, very well the cybersecurity defense of the critical infrastructure. So the long story short, you ask a very short question, I gave a long answer.
That was on kind of record.
The industrial control system, IC-SCADA, critical infrastructure, other transportation systems moved ahead of the automotive industry into standardization, into awareness, into taking steps. Even though control systems have a longer lifespan than vehicles, but it's a bit comparable. You can claim that the vehicle can last 20 years and more, especially trucks and large vehicles. They last forever. They were developed without any cybersecurity in mind, as the canvas and any ECU that you go back 20 years ago, nobody thought about cybersecurity. Today, they moved ahead. So the other industries are ahead of the automotive industry, partly because they have more pressure than the automotive industry, because there were attacks which resulted in fatalities and in financial damage on OT infrastructure, as opposed to the automotive industry, which, except for Charles and Chris, which showed that they can take over a Jeep Cherokee using a Harman IVI. There were attacks. There are attacks. They take over Tesla. I don't want to say names of OEMs. Apologize for any example. So large electric U.S. automotive companies with the T light. Actually, it's not a T. It's part of a wheel. The logo of Tesla is a spike of a wheel. So there are cases in our industry, but none resulted in fatal. So the only pressure that we have now to move ahead with cybersecurity is due to regulation. And CEOs that don't want anything to happen during their term. And insurance companies which want to hedge the risks. And people which are adult and responsible and understand the risks. But you still see many companies that just want to pass regulation and market check that they did things, not necessarily the best solution. Others do. Yes.
On that note, when you look, it's Charles who has a question. When you look at the traditional approach to cybersecurity, you see mainly penetration testing. For cybersecurity to be engaged in a modern agile development process, you need many more cybersecurity people involved. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so those are exactly 5 slides which I removed from my presentation that speaks about what positions you have and how do they play in the along the way. So the best thing that you would have is that every software engineer will be professional and aware of cybersecurity risks and will think software development. Once we call it SDLC, software development lifecycle. Today call it SSDLC, secure software development lifecycle. So in my dreams, everyone is aware of it. Now, there are 2 things that he mentioned. If you find things at the penetration test phase, you should be fired because you did a very lousy job along the way. And if you do risk management, you are reactive and not proactive and not preventive, and you rely that the software is going to be okay, and you do some testing and then you find some things and you fix them, it doesn't work this way. First of all, it's not efficient. PT will not find everything, and PT is just testing. So the assumption is that everything works right and just find some problems. So you need to have your inputs to the risk management out of the abstract architecture of the vehicle, out of vulnerability management, unfortunately out of PT, and it's not a result, it's a last case from the field. If you have an event in a vehicle, then it's an attack on the vehicle, you're dead. So that means that first, don't take the PT as the source of cybersecurity measures that you take. It should be just a proof that you did the right job, not a source of detection. And the second thing, you cannot currently have everyone cybersecurity expert in a team. Keep in mind that in software companies, at least in Israel, the average lifespan of a software engineering in a software company is about 1 year. And then they jump to another company and another company and another company. So retention is very hard, even at very large companies like Facebook and IBM, it's a bit better, but even those golden cages, Google and Facebook, they find it hard to retain good people. They go to found their own startups. That means that it's very hard to build the knowledge and quality inside the whole team. That means that you need a few specialists spread in all the teams, and they should be part of the deal. It's one solution, not only solution. propose it, should be part of the team. They should report professionally to the CISO or the cybersecurity. They should be guided professionally by a central cybersecurity expert that should go through expert training. They should report in terms of tasks to the team leader. They should be part of the team, but they should be advocate and responsible and monitoring the cybersecurity. So this way you create a matrix organization in which the cybersecurity expert is embedded. Not everyone is expert in cybersecurity, but this is the best you can do today, especially due to the quick change of people and the challenge of knowledge management and experience management. And
good. Any more questions from the crowd, or should I take one more? Yeah. Thank you.
I'm Alex from Volkswagen Carriot, and we also researching how we can integrate the Terra iterative on each lifecycle stage in the development process. We are developing regarding the top-down approach. On the upper level systems, we don't have the concrete technical solutions, so we have just logical blocks and make a divide and conquer approach, and then we will find our technical solution at level 4, for example. But we have the problem how we can conduct a full Terra and identify specific controls at the early lifecycle stage, because if we want to conduct a Terra, we need the specific technical architecture. And because then you can assess the attack path, the probability, and this is our problem. What we are researching for, how we can, on a logical way, with the divide and conquer approach, on early life cycle stages, define specific controls, or making a Terra light version. Yeah, that's our problem. We don't find a solution yet. Our approach is maybe we make some technical concepts in the preliminary section of the development. Maybe you have some hints for us, but that's our problem. What we are feeling right now.
So first of all, thank you. It wasn't a planted question. A few things for transparency reasons. My previous employer was a company called Cymotive. Cymotive is 40% owned by Cariad, which is a VW company. So some of the things that I say, I'll try to be very, very strict of not saying things that I know that I should not know. But I'll try to give whatever I know in such a way that it won't be related. The second thing, whatever you said, which was more of a statement than a question, and this means that you listened quite well to my lecture. So you summarized my lecture in 20 seconds. So thank you for that. There is no answer. So let's make it short. There is no answer. You are doing the right things and you are struggling with the right things, the current things, the up-to-date things, and there is no good solution yet. I propose here a few concepts of solutions of doing a integral incremental value Terra and create a overall Terra. But going into multiple level of abstraction is a must, and it's very valuable. The thing is, no promotion here. There are no very many tools that allow you to do. If you work in Excel, you're going to fail. So if you're doing Terra in Excel, don't stop it now, think again, and return to us when you have a tool. If you have an automation tool, then the tools need to provide multiple level of abstraction. So you can do it at the vehicle level at the beginning, and then you can do it module by module, ECU by ECU. You can take the ICAS 2, ICAS 3, ICAS 4, ICAS 20, take the high power computer and divide it into virtual machines and do it per virtual machine, per virtual function, per domain, per whatever. What you cannot prove right now, because nobody proved that if you do it this way, the whole gives you a secure solution. There isn't any proof that proves the integral. You need Leibniz and you need Newton to prove calculus. In our area, there is no proof to it. There is no standard to it. There is no. So what? This is a trial and error. It has a lot of impact on the schedule and it has a lot of impact of uncertainty. So you might end up in many vehicles waiting in the parking lot and not being able to sell them because the software is not ready, because you have so many uncertainties. And then top management would yell at you why the software is not ready. And then you explain that you're running Agile and Tara and incremental and they don't understand. And it comes at a price. And I assume that you know the price that it's paid by Carrier for those things, by VW Group as a whole. So it's very easy to come with complaints of why don't you do it on time. But the bottom line, you are doing the right things. And there is no magic touch that I can give you and say what we can do, and if it's relevant, can look a bit deeper and bring our expertise and our experience from other places and look at your process and think if you can improve it, if you missed something. And there might be ways to improve it, but there is no magic one that they can do. Okay, if you do 1 + 1, you are on the right track. What I do think that should and be done is, from experience from other parallel universe, be less rigid, be much more flexible, be much more adaptive, think less structured. And it's a cultural problem. It's a deep cultural problem of thinking agile, not being stereotyped and not being too much inclusive of the European culture, German culture, very strict, very rigid, very structured. Agile is exactly the German way, but the other way around. So you would find it hard to adapt in many cases because of the way that you are brought up, because the education, because of the culture. If you look at other culture, like Middle East cultures, like Indian cultures, like Chinese, not Japanese culture. But again, it's a whole. You cannot say that everyone is the same. They are much more easy to adapt, and they can adapt, and they can. Agile is about a lot of informal communication. Now, how do you do informal communication in a culture which praises the formality? So this is those are things that you cannot solve from here. So my tip to you: become Israeli. It will work for you. I think you will find it a bit hard, but yeah.
Ali Sharokni, product owner, cybersecurity. It's System Weaver. System. Oh, do you have a question?
Yeah, or yeah.
Okay.
It's a statement.
It's a statement about what was shared here, but please go ahead first.
Okay, Jonas Borg from AFRY. Very interesting presentation. I have a lot of questions, but I also have a little bit of a other approach for this because I've seen the same kind of problem as you. And we have written a paper, got it accepted for this SCAR conference in November. And I need to read it because it has a very long title. It's Managing Dependency in Automotive Cybersecurity through Assumption Cybersecurity Claims and Modular Cybersecurity Cases. So I think that's another approach, but not only looking at the TARA, because I think that might be a dead end. There might be other ways of managing cybersecurity over time and reasoning about the confidence that we have in cybersecurity that is effective as well. So hopefully I can make a presentation of that for the next meeting here or in AFRY. Yeah.
share this paper.
Yeah, of course.
We can learn.
We have to read it before you let you on the stage.
No, but that's a good idea.
Yeah. Fine.
Lee?
Yeah, so what I wanted to say, I think you almost had the same discussion that me and Gilad had. I mean, how we tend to think about the defense systems, and that is highly encouraged also by the standard, I would say, that you build up layers of defense to kind of cut through the attack path. And that also encourages a centralized cybersecurity thinking to reduce the feasibility of the entire attack path, even if it might be very easy, let's say, to spoof a signal. But because you have so many firewalls and to get there, then you can argue that the risk is very low to perform that attack, right? And that is very much encouraged by the standard, and that is also one of the reasons, two reasons. The other one also because of lack of competence, and there is no magic bullet there either. And because of these two reasons, I think having a sprint-based Tara is, I wouldn't say it's not good, it's just not feasible right now. I don't know in the future whether it would be feasible or not. Of course, there are things that you need to adapt to your strategy as you go in a more agile fashion. But in general, to have a kind of a cybersecurity architecture to fall back on, I would say that's the most practical way, at least for OEMs and so on. Tier 2s, I don't know, maybe it's a bit different story there. There it's like to be able to have a cybersecurity out of the context. Yeah, but you're an OEM, so I guess, yeah.
Depends. So if we considering carrier, so we are tier 1. So we are not an OEM. So Volkswagen and Audi and Porsche are the OEM. So we are delivering ECUs for Porsche, Audi, and carrier and Volkswagen. So we are a tier 1.
Okay.
This trend, sorry, so this trend of OEMs seeing software-defined vehicle and services as a major source of income drive OEMs to become their own tier 1 in the software space. So developing operating systems such as VWOS or Mercedes, what's the name? MBOS, right? Mm-hmm. And cooperation between OEMs, which is very interesting, in which OEMs reach the conclusion that they are not going to compete on their own if they try to develop everything from scratch. So competing OEMs are collaborating on software development on vehicles, and they will compete on the market with the product. But the software, the basic of the software, is it public, your corporations? No?
No, not really.
Not really. Okay. So without going, in the vehicle corporation is public, I think.
And vehicle based, yeah, but not the software.
Okay. So
because we have
a large 4-letter OEM from the US is cooperating with VW on pickup trucks, and so everything from the design all the way to manufacturing is done by VW, and the only thing which belongs to that OEM is the logo. Okay, so this is a type of changes in the industry which are driven by the software paradigm that shift, and you cannot develop. This is the reason why you find all those huge consortium like Stellantis, which took Fiat, Chrysler, Peugeot, and Citroën, because they realized that they cannot develop everyone their own system, and they need a platform that you might have in some OEMs, a like 3 platforms, and the difference is each OEM has the different design. So if you buy a Skoda or a Golf or a Seat, you buy the same car. The difference is accessories, systems. If you buy an Audi or a Porsche, it's the same car, but a different logo. But the basic, the infrastructure, the software, the same thing. So it looks, the logo outside is a bit different. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Conbrober from Icing. So
From?
Icing AB from Sweden. For Intelligent Things, it's a short name for it.
Okay.
But I work also as consultant also at companies and try to teach how to work with this one. And I use the System Weaver too, because I start for 7 years, something like that back, where we model-based all our functionalities, where we go from the top down. And also now in the TARAs and the cybersecurity also, I connect to my features in the top level and break it down, because you need that functionalities, you need some software, and then you place it in some hardware model. And then you have the relationship through the tool. So now you can connect with the System Weaver now for the TARAs. We connect from the realization to so to say the risk analysis. And now it's traceable from the top level. So if you change if you take like a password, if the user should put in some password, you need to break it down some functionalities. You will allocate that in some ECU. Then that will inherit and also get requirements from that to that hardware model. So it's a good, I can say that in System Weaver, the approach works quite good.
It wasn't implanted.
No, it's not implanted. No, but so it gives now, because you can take your, so to say, theoretical model from the logics first, and the guys who do the implementation, they can run their work, and then you can combine the things and do the possibilities. So it's like I heard from you, the model-based. I think that is, and of course, it's a combination with waterfall, because you need that where you break down things, but in an agile way where you do your loops, because you will start on some top requirements from the start.
The thing that I want to relate to what you say, the hardware and software, you cannot really separate them anymore. So when you do vulnerability management, it's not software vulnerability management. You do vulnerability management because there can be a vulnerability in the hardware.
Yes.
For example, the meltdown was a vulnerability in Intel chips. So you cannot. So if you can say that you do application layer, application lifecycle management. But if you do the whole thing, you can take into consideration hardware as well.
Yeah, but if you realize with the software, you should not put a cybersecurity software in a weak processor. Then you need a better processor. So there you give the decision possibilities.
The second thing that you mentioned is the level of abstractions that you need to go through. So as Alex, right, from Cariat mentioned, this is a must. This is too complex and to comprehend to have one thing, which is the whole universe. So you need to do level of abstractions, and you cannot have one tool that does one level flat and think the world is flat. There are no flat earther here, right? So I heard that those people that believe in flat earth have many supporters around the globe.
Just wanted to mention that's what Alex said about the leveling. Okay, yeah. And Mira, I'm Border cybersecurity engineer working at System Weaver. Just wanted to mention actually, yeah, at first it's difficult to differentiate between software and hardware, but by having levels of analysis for full functional safety and cybersecurity, the aim is at the end to be able actually to differentiate, to match the hardware and software. So
Thank you.
Should happen, yeah.
Nice. Any, yes, please. Yeah.
So Jonas Magasinius, Short AV. did I understand you right that if you find vulnerabilities during a penetration test, you should be fired?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Not if you are the pen tester, then you should be praised. If you are the project manager and the software developer, then you should be fired. Yes.
Okay. I strongly disagree with that. Penetration testing should not lay blame, not on the developers nor the project leaders. It's just one tool of many, and it should provide a competent analysis of the application from a security standpoint, which you said that the developers cannot have themselves. You cannot have that in the organization. And static analysis, for example, will not find all the vulnerabilities. So you will definitely, in the end, have vulnerabilities in your product, and you will also have vulnerabilities that might not yet have been discovered in terms of log4j, say. So just on a personal note, I would have been the reason for hundreds of people being fired, and I don't want that on my conscience.
Don't hold it. Okay,
so finally, my question: doesn't the risk of losing your job discourage from doing penetration testing?
Okay, so let me rephrase my statement, and I took it a bit too much to the extreme. So in a more moderate fashion, I would prefer to prevent and left shift as much as possible. I know that it's not possible to breach. Nothing is perfect, and there are things that shit happens sometimes. My claim is that the earlier you do things right, the chances to find something bad late decrease. And my dream is that we would do such a good job ahead of time in the design, in the development, in implementing controls, so when we reach the testing, as in the functional testing, a functional testing should not find faults. Okay, if you developed right, the functional testing, which should be called V&V, validation and verification, and not quality assurance. If someone calls quality assurance the wrong term, should find everything in place. So it is just to verify and validate and prove that it is according. And if they find something not in order, then we agree that this is something wrong from the software development process. They have a bug. It's not something good. It's not something acceptable. They should have done their job right, perfect, and reached the testing phase in which everything is intact. The same I would claim for penetration testing. Now, I understand that in nature, in the wild, things are not perfect. And you find bugs at the phase. And you need to take into account that you need to return to development and fix those bugs. The same goes with penetration testing. But it's not a tool that I would rely on as the first tool, the first line of defense for security. So I would not forget about controls and about all those things and say, let's develop whatever comes out when the penetration testers will tell me what to do. So yes, it's another tool, it's another line of defense. If you build your defense lines, you'll always have a few lines of defense and build a defense in depth. So the penetration test is a real defense, part of defense in depth. My wish is they would not find nothing. So don't fire your R&D manager because there was not everything is up to him. So I apologize for taking it to binary into black and white. No, it's not right to say black and white anymore. Too binary is fine. Binary. Too extreme. Binary is not politically correct.
Extreme is good.
Step here on a lot of minds.
Let's back out slowly.
I think I'll close this down now before it gets out of hand. Thank you. I think we're moving here. We're gonna try out if we're gonna have housewarming party.